How does Frusemide decrease both positive and negative free water clearance? To answer this question, let's first understand what is free water clearance. If the urine is isoosmotic to that of plasma, there is neither positive nor negative free water clearance. If the urine is hypotonic compared to that of plasma, then you say that there is positive free water clearance. Positive free water clearance means the solute free water that is excreted in excess of that is needed to maintain the urine isoosmotic to that of plasma. Confused? I'll give you an arbitrary example. Say, 5 liters of water is needed to maintain urine isoosmotic to that of plasma. But instead of 5, if 6 liters of water is excreted, you can say that 1 liter of water is excreted in excess of that is needed to maintain urine isoosmotic. So here 1 liter of water is the solute free water that is excreted in excess. So there is positive free water clearance. Whereas if the osmolality of urine is more than that of plasma, we say that there is negative free water clearance. Negative free water clearance means a highly concentrated urine is secreted. Explaining with the same example, if instead of 5 liter, only 1 liter of urine is passed, there is negative free water clearance. Now let's get back to our question. This is the schematic representation of nephron, which is the functional unit of kidney. The process of urine formation begins in the glomerular capillary tuft by a process called as ultrafiltration. The filtrate formed here is protein-free ultrafiltrate of plasma. This protein-free ultrafiltrate then reaches the proximal convoluted tubule. The proximal convoluted tubule is permeable to both water and solutes. Please note that the water absorption in the proximal convoluted tubule is proportionate to that of solute. So the tubular fluid remains isoosmotic here. This is the thick ascending limb of loop of Henle. This part of the nephron is impermeable to water and permeable only to solutes. Thus, this is called the diluting segment of the nephron. Sodium and chloride are reabsorbed with the help of symphodes. Thus, solutes accumulate in the renal interstitium, making the renal interstitium hypertonic. This is the thin descending limb of loop of Henle, and this part of the nephron is only permeable to water. The water is passively absorbed from these tubules because of the hypertonicity of the renal interstitium, and thus the tubular fluid is concentrated. The differential permeabilities and the opposite direction of flow of the tubular fluid in the two limbs of loop of Henle is responsible for it acting as the countercurrent multiplier, and this in turn creates a corticomedullary osmotic gradient. This is the distal convoluted tubule. It's just like the thick ascending limb of loop of Henle. This part is also only permeable to solutes with the help of certain symphodes, and it is impermeable to water. So this is also a diluting segment. This is the collecting duct, and the tubular fluid entering the collecting duct is hypotonic. The collecting duct regulates the final volume and composition of excreted urine with the help of antidiuretic hormone. The collecting duct is permeable to solute and water. It absorbs sodium via epithelial sodium channels, and this part of the nephron becomes permeable to water via insertion of water channels called as aquaporins in the presence of antidiuretic hormone. If there is no antidiuretic hormone, the tubular fluid entering the collecting duct is excreted as such. But in the presence of antidiuretic hormone, the water is reabsorbed, and this water reabsorption into the renal interstitium is aided by the corticomedullary osmotic gradient. So remember, the collecting duct in the presence of antidiuretic hormone excretes a concentrated urine. The proximal convoluted tubule reabsorbs about 65 to 70% of the filtered sodium load. The thin descending limb of loop of Henle is impermeable to solutes, so there is no reabsorption. The thick ascending limb of loop of Henle reabsorbs about 20 to 25% of the filtered sodium load. 8 to 9% is absorbed from the distal convoluted tubule and the rest is absorbed from the collecting duct. The thick ascending limb of the loop of Henle is the diluting segment of the nephron. This part of the nephron has specialized sodium-potassium 2-chloride sympoters. They absorb only solutes and there is no reabsorption of water. Thus, the tubular fluid in the thick ascending limb of the loop of Henle is hypotonic, and thus this part of the nephron is responsible for the positive free water clearance. But our drug, that is Frusemide, acts by inhibiting the sodium-potassium 2-chloride sympoter, thus abolishing the positive free water clearance. The sodium-potassium 2-chloride sympoter is also responsible for maintaining the corticomedullary osmotic gradient. And this osmotic gradient helps in driving water out of the thin descending limb of loop of Henle as well as the collecting duct via aquaporins. Frusemide, by inhibiting the sodium-potassium 2-chloride sympoter, would also abolish the corticomedullary osmotic gradient and thus abolishing the negative free water clearance. This is how Frusemide abolishes both positive and negative free water clearance. Thiazide-like diuretics, which act on the distal convoluted tubule, which is also a diluting segment, would abolish only the positive free water clearance and not the negative free water clearance, because the distal convoluted tubule has no role in maintaining the corticomedullary osmotic gradient. And drugs like vaptans, which act by inhibiting the antidiuretic hormone, would interfere with the concentrating ability of the collecting duct and thus abolish the negative free water clearance. To summarize, Frusemide abolishes both positive and negative free water clearance, thiazides abolish positive free water clearance, and vaptans abolishes negative free water clearance.